Thank you. So, excuse me. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the housing meeting. As previously mentioned, I'm Rashida Hilliard, and I am the housing chair. As a community board committee, we loosely follow Robert's Rules of Order. We will be following the agenda that was previously distributed. If we open the topic to general discussion, we ask that if you would like to speak, that you raise your hand, and I will call on you, either myself or Jessica. Our goal is to have a good, robust discussion of all our agenda items. However, if we have many people who would like to speak on any individual topic, you may only get to speak once, so make it count. If you are not speaking, we ask that you keep yourself muted to prevent background noise from interrupting others. And of course, we're all on Zoom, so to raise your hand, you can use the those emotions or emoticons at the bottom of the screen. And if you're on your phone, it's *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise your hand. So without further ado, um, I'm actually generally we go in the order of we do a roll call, but we're going to hold off on a roll call and we're going to hold off on approving the minutes from December 22nd. And so what we will do is we will turn it over to our guest speakers from NYCHA, and that's Nikolai Nyashin. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yes, thanks.
And Brian Holman.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hilliard, and I really appreciate all the community board members who came out today. I know today was an interesting day to say the least, but it's good that we're all safe and able to participate. I've been invited here today to talk about the PAC program, which is a program that we've used in your community board at Fort Independence. And we have a short presentation that I was hoping that Nikolai could pull up, and we can just go through what the program is, why we use it, and then also I know that you had some specific questions towards Fort Independence, and we'll let Nikolai address those. I did ask him to come as backup, but he also is going to participate in the presentation as well. So as you all know, if anyone's familiar with NYCHA's issues, we've been disinvested in all levels of government. Mostly the federal government, though. The federal government has underfunded NYCHA, and not only NYCHA, just public housing authorities throughout the country for decades, right? And during the Obama years, they tried to look for a solution to public housing's issues, to bring more funding into developments. But they wanted to do it in a way that didn't require additional allocations. And so what they came up with is a federal program known as RAD. And what RAD does is it takes public housing developments, which is Section 9, and it converts them to Section 8. Okay, so why did they do that? Well, there is more funding in Section 8 than there is in Section 9. Now, Section 8 comes in many different programs. Most people know it as a tenant-based program, meaning a tenant gets a voucher and it's up to them to go in the private market and find a landlord who will accept it. But the Section 8 that we're talking about tonight is project-based Section 8. So the voucher is tied to the apartment, and the specific type of vouchers that we use for this program are called tenant protection vouchers. And these vouchers are worth twice as much as the public housing subsidy. So right there, just doing just that alone, we'll be bringing in more revenue to invest in the developments. In addition, RAD does not require this, but here in New York City, we do it this way, that we partner with a private entity to manage the developments. Now, in New York City, we've changed the name from RAD to PACT. Why? Because we've enhanced the program with additional tenant rights, right? So a lot of times if you Google RAD, you may find, nationally, there's been issues, with the program, specifically around tenants' rights. We know in New York City, the tenants' rights are so important that we created a much more robust program, and we made sure that tenants have more involvement, specifically around choosing the developers, which is not a requirement, specifically around engagement, which we typically do for more than a year before development converts, and specifically around regular engagement moving forward. So right now, we receive, NYCHA receives about $700 million a year in capital funds. And that sounds like a lot of money. But if you're spreading it around 330 developments, some with populations as large as an upstate town, it really goes very quickly. And so when you're dealing with a pot of money like that, what we do is we spread it around the portfolio. So, a development like Jackson Houses may get new boilers. A development like Morrisania Air Rights may get new elevators. A development like Eastchester Gardens could get a new roof. In the end of the day, what happens is that residents are left still wanting for more, and deserving more too. And so what PACT allows us to do is to do a comprehensive modernization. So we are able to replace the infrastructure, so new boilers, new elevators, new roofs, and also get into people's apartments. And in a minimum of the scope of these projects inside people's apartments means new kitchens, new bathrooms, new windows, and new flooring. The apartments are, in our new scopes, are abated for lead, and they are mold safe and asbestos safe as well. So if you look here, these are the comprehensive modernizations that we're talking about here too. I also too want to note that NYCHA is not selling anything here. We continue to own the buildings and we continue to own the land. What we do is we enter into a ground lease with our partners, and that relationship can be ended at any time with cause. So if one of the partners is not holding up to their end of the bargain and not doing what they're supposed to, residents and NYCHA can decide that we need a new partner who is going to be responsible and come in to manage these properties. So that's very important. It is a right that we have exercised, in more than one development. It's something that we don't like to do. It's something that we wish we never had to do. But, if you're not holding up to your end of the bargain, then you don't deserve to be managing these properties, and we will find somebody who will. But if you visit a development, one of these developments, you will see within 3 years, most of the repairs that were called for in the scope will be taken care of. Fort Independence was a development that for many years had challenges just meeting basic services. It was a development where heating was a challenge. It was a development where elevator service was a challenge. It was a development with safety and security were often issues that were raised to me. And now I'm not hearing as much of that. I'm sure things are not perfect. It is still pretty early in the construction process, but already I'm hearing about some improvements. And Nikolai, if we can go to the next slide. So residents mostly have concerns about their rights and protections that they enjoy now as public housing residents. So while residents do have issues with NYCHA as an authority, they do really enjoy the privileges and the protections that they have as public housing residents. So for PAC converted tenants, their income continues to be the most important factor when calculating rent. Residents will not pay any more than 30% of their income towards rent. So that's true in public housing, and that is true in PACT as well. Okay. And what's also really important to note here is that when the existing tenants, if they move out, if they pass away, if they leave the development for whatever reason, the next tenants coming in are tenants off the NYCHA waiting list. So this program, there is no vacancy decontrol or anything like that. This program continues to serve the same population who is there now. Fees or charges cannot be put in place that are any higher than public housing fees. So residents pay for things like having a washing machine in their apartment or having an air conditioner in their apartment. Those fees continue to exist, but they are no higher than what NYCHA residents pay. The Section 8 eligibility, which is actually lower than the income that serves for public housing, which is about 50% of AMI. That is what qualifies for new residents. For existing residents, they are grandfathered in and they automatically qualify for the Section 8 vouchers in this case. Residents get automatic lease renewal as long as they're in good standing. So if they pay the rent, if they're being good neighbors, they will automatically get lease renewals. In some cases, we have to do temporary relocation. Some apartments are in really rough shape, and so we have to do like a gut rehab. Or if we're doing things like an abatement, we will temporarily relocate residents. All of that will be done at no cost to the resident. We will pack them up. We will move them to either a hotel or another apartment in the development, depending on the length of stay. And they have a right to return to the apartment in which they came from. There is right sizing, meaning we have residents who live in public housing who maybe a single resident or a couple who are in a 3-bedroom or sometimes even 4-bedroom apartments. Under this program, we have to right size. And we believe that this is not only part of the rules, but it's also good. It's good policy. These apartments were there for families when they needed it and should also go to a family as well. In reverse, this is also true too. So sometimes we have some people who are overcrowded, and under this program, we have to find apartments for people who are in, that meet their size. Residents have a right to, organize and form tenant associations, and the management companies have to recognize those tenants, those organizations. Under PAC developments, we have to meet all 504 federal 504 rules. So we have to offer apartments for people with disabilities. At least 7% of the apartments need to be accessible in each building, and that is for people with mobility issues. In addition, PACT is a really great Section 3 opportunity. PAC partners are required to set aside 25% of all labor hours for NYCHA residents. So it's a good economic opportunity for residents in many different ways too. So that's some of the overview of the program itself. I'll let Nikolai talk about the issues at Fort Independence, and then we'll take your questions.
Thank you, Brian. I'll just go over to the agenda here. So we received 4 questions from the community board. specifically about Fort Independence. The first was, what are some of the specific goals that PACT expects to achieve in 2026, specifically with renovations, improving residents' living conditions, and modernization? So in 2026, PACT will continue advancing renovations and modernization efforts to address longstanding capital needs, like Brian mentioned, including at Fort Independence and Heath Avenue, which are located in CB8. Renovations focus on comprehensive apartment upgrades as well as major building-wide improvements, such as upgrading heating systems, elevators, roofs, facades, security systems, and other site improvements. PAC will also ensure compliance with ADA standards, like Brian mentioned, improve safety and cleanliness, and modernize building systems. We can share later the specific plans that we have for the Northwest Bronx bundle, which includes Fort Independence and Heath Avenue. The second question that we received was, what sorts of green energy upgrades do we plan to implement with respect to the PAC program? So there are a few different things that we can do, and specifically at Fort Independence that we're working on. These can include modernizing more efficient heating systems, upgrading building systems and infrastructure to make them more energy efficient, new windows and improved building envelopes to reduce energy loss, and replacing or upgrading building equipment that reduces waste and improves performance. In addition, NYCHA and the PAC partner also remediates health hazards within both apartments and building-wide, including lead, radon, asbestos, and other harmful chemicals and materials. So the fourth question we received is, how can NYCHA residents be involved in the process of helping PAC fulfill its goals? Residents at Fort Independence should continue and are always invited to construction meetings to provide feedback to staff. If residents have ideas, issues, or questions, they can continue to raise them with the PAC partner. We have an office on site that the management team holds, and we can share their contact info and the contact info for the PAC team as well with the board. The final question we received was, how many apartments will be impacted by PACT in 2026? So within Community Board number 8, 344 apartments are being converted to the PACT program and are undergoing construction currently. No other developments in the district are being considered for PACT at this time. So that's our answers there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. And so before we open it up to questions and Q&A, because I know we have a number of people here, I do have to take attendance and also approve the prior minutes. So with that being said, let me start with Rashida Hilliard here, Jessica Sosa
Here.
Brittany Reynoso. Brittany? Are you here, Brittany?
She's logged in, but she's muted.
Let me see if I can press unmute. Actually, I'm not in control of it. So Brittany Reynoso, when you get a chance, may you please unmute yourself. Richard Perez, absent, and Ingrid De Leon, absent. I would like to make a move to approve our minutes from December 22nd. Do I have?
I second.
Okay. Oh, so thank you. That was Jessica and Brittany. So we have a quorum. We're not voting on anything today, but we have a quorum, and our minutes have been approved. So thank you all. And without further ado, I would like to open this up for any questions from the community. We have a number of people here from the community. If you have any questions for both Brian and Nikolai, please ask your questions.
Yes. That's
Yes,
right.
that's
I'm
stated.
doing it old school. I'm raising my hand on the camera.
Okay, I can see. Okay, so I see your
instead
hand.
of doing the finding the thingy.
Yeah, I was waiting for the emoji. What happened? It's okay.
I didn't know what it was. Where is that emoji? Can't find these emojis. So I'm an accountant, and I focus on accounting related to Section 8 and Section 9 PACT, and more specifically having to do with keeping track of things like reimbursements, incentive programs, things like that, which you guys know as well. So and I have a system that does it. How do I get involved in working with companies like, for instance, like MDG, I'm reading this, MDG Design or Wavecrest or Bronx Pro Group. These are companies that are working with the Randalls Avenue, Balcom Avenue. And like, how do I get involved in getting them to look at my accounting application that focuses on Section 8, Section 9 and PACT, because it would make things more efficient?
Sure. David, if you want, I will put my email in the chat and you can send it to me. I speak to the folks in those groups regularly, and maybe I can make an introduction, by email.
That'd be good. Okay.
Okay.
We
Thanks.
don't. Hi, this is Artie from Bronx Me Board 8. We don't have a chat section in our video. David, if you can
Oh,
just
you don't?
email the
Okay.
board office
Oh, okay.
and we
Sure,
can share
I'll
Brian.
email the board office at, and let me just, what is that email? Even though I guess I have it somewhere, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's on our website, bx08 at cb.nyc.gov, and we can share Brian's email with you.
Okay.
And Brian, you're welcome to dictate it as well, just so you can have it now on the call.
Sure. So my email address is Brian, BRIAN, .Honan, HONAN, at NYC.gov. Please, anyone, feel free to email me anytime. Also, even if you live in Fort Independence or a PAC development, you can feel free to, still email me. We are, as I said, we're still the building owners. I really want to know what's going on at PAC properties. And I talk to PAC residents all the time too. So we don't convert and then walk away.
Okay. So I'll send the email to the both of those. So bx08 at cb.nyc.gov. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that information. And anyone else on the call have any questions while we have NYCHA's ears? I see Jessica's hand.
My emoji hand is up. I have a question. It seems like I don't know if we'll ever have enough money to catch up to the needs for NYCHA. Like, has there been a plan developed or a budget plan to keep up? Or, what can we do as a resolution, as a community board to support these properties in our community to find some kind of catch-up plan, whether that's a 5, 10, 30-year plan, but, kind of to keep up with these maintenance, with the maintenance and everything that the properties need and then that the residents need, right? So, but explicitly right now, just one or the other, if you can talk about it. Where are we with that?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. It does seem overwhelming, and it is sometimes things that I'm thinking about at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm looking at my ceiling. But to be honest, we need support on all levels. So the state is about to pass their budget on April 1st. So if you have relationships with your state legislators, please ask them to make sure that they don't pass a budget without including NYCHA in it. The same goes with the city. The same goes with your federal representatives. This past federal budget included a 14% cut for NYCHA, which when you're already underfunded, cutting 14% is really tough to stomach. The other thing is, we really do need support when it comes to plans that we have. We as New Yorkers, we really love to consider ourselves to be a very progressive city. In many ways, we are a very progressive city, but we also, often don't embrace change, right? And in order for the Housing Authority, and not only NYCHA, but housing authorities throughout the country, in order them to continue to operate, they have to be open to different ideas. PACT is a different idea. We came up with the Preservation Trust, which was something that passed in 2022 in Albany, which is another conversion, but it is NYCHA manages the property still. We'd also be interested in doing things around building on our land, building new buildings for revenue to be invested in the buildings. But often, we'll come up with ideas, and often we're not, it's not supported. So support goes a long way, both from inside and outside the community. It's easy to say no. Sometimes, to back us, though, would be really appreciated.
Just a quick follow-up. When you said building on existing land, could you be more specific? Do you have an example?
Sure. So we have, for our developments, not for Independence, but for many of our developments, they were built with a lot of land. In fact, they called it a towers in the park model. And so there are plots within our developments where you could build a new building, right? And you could, depending on, what is needed, you could build 100% affordable, like we've done at Forest Houses, the Melrose houses, or you could build a building that is mixed use, right? So has some units that are market rate, some units that are middle income, some units that are geared more to lower income. Those types of buildings would generate more revenue. That revenue could be invested into the property to keep it going and get the repairs that the public housing residents have been looking for decades in many cases.
Thank you for sharing.
And yes, thank you. And I guess maybe I sort of have a follow-up question, even though I think Jessica put the follow-up question afterwards. So I would like to know how much of these initiatives are initiated from the actual tenants. Are they aware of these initiatives, or are they just brought to them? Because I know you mentioned that change is kind of difficult at times, and I'm wondering if it's because they're not familiar with the change, or so I'll just stop right there.
Sure. So we really do take our engagement very serious. So in Fort Independence, we started talking to the residents about a year and a half before we converted. We had many meetings. We had, some over Zoom, some in person. And I believe it was like a roller coaster of emotions and support. Sometimes folks, were vehemently against, and towards the end, I think people, felt more comfortable with the conversion. So it really is better when residents do understand these programs, and they're also given the opportunity to be part of a committee that chooses developers, right, and chooses the management companies. And that is really important because we're essentially creating marriages, right? Like they're going to be the management companies that are going to be at the developments are going to be there, and they're going to have dealings with the residents, every single day. So it's really important that they feel comfortable and confident in the teams coming in. So that's really important. The program that we created with the state is called the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust. In order to get in that program, it requires a vote. So residents get to vote on the trust, they can vote on PACT, or they can vote to remain as is. And so that is a state requirement. It's not a requirement for PACT, but the engagement on the federal rules for RAD are actually not all that great. That's why we created PACT to make sure that they were much better.
Thank you. Um, Jessica?
Thanks. I'm just trying to get a big picture. Do you got going into revenue, right? So my understanding is NYCHA doesn't make a lot of money. If anything, it doesn't net zero, right? So you're talking about revenue. Is that idea just to like get NYCHA to like a net zero budget? Or, like, do you have numbers? Or is there like data? Is there a report? Because that will make it easier to put a claim and say, like, hey, this is how we can net zero the cost of NYCHA. It's our most vulnerable communities, in New York City, and we need to support it. Otherwise, you're just gonna have people in the street. You're gonna keep our police busy. It's gonna cause, it's gonna provoke other issues where other agencies are paying for it. So it's just like we might as well support these vulnerable communities. So it's just like, is there some kind of report, or is anybody working on a report so we can justify a change, right? And get creative with, how to support our NYCHA residents and our NYCHA properties.
Yeah, and I can send over to the board our capital needs report, which we do every 5 years and it's done independently. And what it does show is that we have about an $80 billion capital backlog. What that means is we essentially need $80 billion in order to bring all of our properties to a state of good repair. When I talk about revenue, unfortunately, I'm talking about development by development revenue, not the whole portfolio. And so it would take a long time to get that $80 billion and a lot of political will. But I can send that report. I could also send over what we bring in from the federal government, what we bring in from the city and from the state over the years too, so that can give you a better idea of our budget. And last too, rent is really important to NYCHA. People don't realize it, but it's about 40% of our budget. And the pandemic was really, really hard on NYCHA residents for many reasons, but rent arrears really grew during that period. And people are still, believe it or not, catching up years later, because when you get into a hole, that is, $10 and sometimes $12,000, it starts to feel like there's no way I can, get my head above water, and people then start, stop paying rent. Luckily, we were able to come up with a few different rental assistance programs to help people, get back on their feet. But it's, that's been really difficult. But I can send that additional information to the board. Also, too, after looking at it, if you wanna invite us back, we'll be happy to come back as well.
Do
Oh,
you,
that
sorry,
would be
just to
nice.
follow up, do you have something more Community 8 specific? So then we can kind of talk about case by case plans for the NYCHA properties in Community Board 8?
Well, I think the only properties in Community Board 8, right, are Fort Independence and Nikolai, correct me,
Marble
Is
Hill.
Marble Hill and Community Board 8?
Marble Hill as well.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, okay, let me ask for something with Marble Hill, because Marble Hill is the remaining, so Marble Hill's a tough property. But I could definitely come up with that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Um,
Sorry, just a quick question. So Fort Independence and Marble Hill, yeah, they're here in this area. So are they section 9 or are they section 8? Or I got a little confused, sorry.
So yeah, Fort Independence is now section it is now section 8. It was converted to Pact. Marble Hill is mostly section 9. However, because it was built locally, there are some section 8 tenants in Marble Hill.
And did the section 8 people in Marble Hill vote to be packed, or am I saying that completely wrong?
No, it is so we converted that property from the state program to the federal program in going back to 2010. And we resident when we have vacancies, we make those individual apartments project-based Section 8. So, but it's not packed in the same sense. We had 21 properties in 2010 that were locally built. And in those properties, we were given 8,500 vouchers in order to bring them into the Section 8 program.
Just in terms of numbers, do you have an average amount of time where that people stay in these developments? Because I understand it's supposed to be transient, so to speak, but it's not always the case. So
Not at all the case. In fact, the average nature family lives in their apartment for 25 years. And so it definitely is. Oftentimes the folks who live in nature are the most stable people in almost any community. So people do live in their apartments for a long time. That also is one of the reasons too that, it takes a long time to turn over an apartment, because there's a lot of wear and tear in an apartment after 25 years. And also when we turn over an apartment to the next family, it is lead free, it is mold safe, it has, new appliances, and it is asbestos free as well. So we do all that environmental work to make sure that the next family going in is going into a safe apartment. That was not always the case. It's only something that we've been doing over the last few years, and I'm really proud that we're able to do that.
So does that mean that if I think I might know the answer, but does that mean that if a person has been in the development for a certain amount of time, that it doesn't get checked until maybe they move out? Or is there like a regular
No, yeah.
okay, just
Yeah,
making
so
sure.
we have to do, we do have to do annual inspections, in apartments, and there we're looking for health and safety violations. But we really do encourage residents to call in issues that they have, because sometimes, Nikolai or myself will get some apartments in really rough shape. And by the time it gets to us, when we look at the history, we see that no complaint has been made over the last few years. And, it could have been dealt with, way before, we got to the crisis point.
In terms of longevity and why people stay 25 years, there's probably a lot of reasons. But one thing is, I believe once you're accepted into the program, your financial status isn't really rechecked. Am I wrong with that? They don't.
Yeah, no, that's not the case. So
Okay.
we have to do an annual recertification every single year, and that's true for both Section 8 and for Section 9, right? So and that determines your rent, right? So if your income goes up, your rent goes up. If your income goes down, your rent goes down as well. Now, in 2016, Congress passed a law known as HOTMA, which is like the worst acronym ever, but that's the name of the law, and you could look it up. It creates a over income limit for residents who live in public housing. So if your income is above 120% of AMI, you are now priced out of public housing. You are allowed to stay, but you would no longer be subsidized, and your rent will go up to fair market rent, which is significantly more. It's still not market rent, but it is still more than tenants who live in public housing.
Do we have anyone else on the call who might have any questions before we continue? Because we do want to make sure that this is a conversation for everyone, but sometimes we on the board also have a lot of questions. So I'm wanted to give it a little time just in case people are having trouble with emoticons, whatever they're called. Going once, going twice. Okay, Jennifer Nazario.
Sorry, I was a little confused as to what's the difference between section 8 and section 9. I wasn't familiar with the term section 9, so I just wanted a little more clarity on that.
Sure. So Section 9 is Section 9 of the Housing Act of 1939, and that is traditional public housing, basically. So, when you think of NYCHA and the public housing developments, throughout our portfolio, most of the people who live in the apartments there are served under the Section 9 program. Section 8 has a few different, forms. Most people know it as tenant-based vouchers. So these are vouchers that are given to tenants, and they go out and they find landlords willing to accept them. There's also project-based Section 8, and this is Section 8 where the voucher is tied to the apartment. Two different programs, but they're both federally funded. But both allocated, the allocations are both different, though. That's a big thing too, as well.
Thank you. Jessica, did you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, is there any data regarding like the fact that your rent on public housing is linked to your income and how that could cyclically keep families in poverty because it doesn't motivate them, kind of like, kind of puts them in a tough place where I might have maybe I get an opportunity to make an extra $10,000, but that $10,000 will equate to a $20,000 increase in my rent, or, and these are just random numbers. And then you have people that are qualified for higher paying jobs rejecting those opportunities because it's a negative for them because of these programs. Like, is there a resolution regarding that, or what's your opinion on that? And, what's the discussion around, incentivizing people to get out of poverty without having to, or at least having some time to develop a savings, right? Or develop a plan to then join, the fair market housing opportunities outside of NYCHA?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It is an argument that I hear a lot of people who are against public housing make. But I will say that I personally do not agree with it. I really do think that if you have the opportunity to do better, I think you are, even if you had to pay a little bit more, or you had the opportunity to leave a development and live in other types of housing, I think people will choose that. I haven't met a resident yet who has told me that I could have made, significantly more money, but I turned it down because I want to stay in my current apartment. To me, where the real benefit of income-based rent comes into is the safety net it provides, right? So any other type of housing, whether it's rent controlled, rent stabilized, and definitely market rate housing, doesn't take your income into consideration, right? So even if you have a really nice rent stabilized apartment and your rent is at an affordable rate, if you lose your job, whatever that rent is, your landlord expects you to come up with that money, and rightfully so, right? But in public housing, if you lose your job or if your hours are decreased, your rent is adjusted to meet your income needs now. I don't have statistics, to back up your question. I could ask, we have a research team though, to see if they have any reports I can send to you, but I just think that, most of the people who live in NYCHA On average, a family makes $26,000 a year. So we're not talking about people who are making a lot of money. We really are talking about people who a city needs in order to make it work. People who, love to live here, but without public housing or without Section 8, they probably wouldn't be able to.
And I also mentioned that a fair amount of NYCHA residents are seniors, so they're on fixed income anyway, right? So these income limits do help them afford to live in the city where their families are, where they're access to healthcare, transportation, all the benefits of living in New York at an affordable price.
Thanks. Is there anything that we can do as a community board to besides, I know we're holding a meeting, but is there anything that we can do, any further actions we can take to maybe get the message out or help out?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, we appreciate the invitation, and and we'll come back anytime. I do think that it is just important to, to have conversations like this. I think that's really important. But I also know that you have relationships in the community, you have relationships with the elected officials. If you, please let them know that it's really important that they support public housing residents and they support, people in Section 8. And and if we do come back, with some sort of plan, just be open-minded and hear us out. And we really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And any other questions? I'm going to turn it over to Jessica in a second, but just in case people are still looking for ways to raise their hand. Going once, going twice, and so to Jessica.
Sorry, I'm just intrigued and want to understand better, just so I can ponder what we can do, because it is just a long-standing issue, right, with regards to supporting NYCHA properties and NYCHA residents. So you had, Nikolai, you had mentioned that a lot of NYCHA residents are seniors or maybe people with disabilities. I'd be interested to know, is there an existing program explicitly for housing for seniors, for people with disabilities, where, perhaps the resolution is, hey, this NYCHA building is actually, predominantly senior residents or residents with disabilities. It's essentially a senior home within a NYCHA property, right? And, I'd be interested to know, like, should we propose a grant program or some program where I don't know how a senior resident home gets assistance and how that's different from NYCHA, and maybe talk about marrying, right? Marrying the two, where it's just like, this is essentially a senior home because the residents that are there are seniors with disabilities. They just don't have the explicit amenities like doctors or nurses and all that. Is that something, that could work? What are your thoughts on that?
So we do manage about 26 senior developments. So these are developments that have, in order to live there, you have to be over 62. But they don't really provide any additional services other than the fact that, seniors just live there. But I do understand your point, and we have two developments in the Bronx, Boston Road and Middletown Plaza, which were senior developments. So we converted to PACT, and we were able to bring in a lot more services for residents. Also make sure that they were much more modern in making sure that residents had the additional physical support that they needed, both in their apartments and the common areas. I don't know specifically. There is 202 housing, which is housing that is a federal program that is just for seniors. If there's a way to marry those, I've never heard of that before, but if there is a way to marry them, I think that would be great. Also declaring more nature properties as NORCs, meaning naturally occurring retirement communities. That comes with funding. That would be great too. So yeah, I mean, those are just some of the ideas off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you very much. And I gave up my email address. I know oftentimes I think of questions like an hour or the next day. So anybody wants to reach out to us, you know, if you have any other questions based on the presentation we gave today or anything else nature related, please feel free to reach out. We really appreciate this opportunity and we'll come back anytime we're invited.
Oh, thank you for taking the time out, and luckily the snow did not deter you from even joining on Zoom. Um,
Yep.
we do actually ask people to come back. Sometimes we give it a couple of months, maybe it could be the next cycle. But we do appreciate you coming, and hopefully, you know, once we get these minutes out, people read them. Perhaps there will be more questions from the community. But in the meantime, we thank you. And we do actually have a question from our chairperson, the CBA chairperson. So I'm going to just turn it over to Julie Reyes.
Thank you, Rashida, and thank you for the guest speakers. In the presentation, it was mentioned that
Can't hear you too well, Julie. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
It's kind of hollow.
Oh gosh.
It's really low.
As far as inspectors, are there inspections? Are they low in manpower with inspectors?
It's really tough to hear you. Sorry, Julie.
Okay.
If you want to send if your question is simple, maybe you can text it or email or call it in. Unfortunately, we don't have a chat, so it can't.
Inspectors. Okay. Julie
Oh,
just texted me.
okay.
Okay. Her questions regarding inspectors. Do you have enough inspectors? Is the question.
Health inspectors, well, so the apartments every year have to pass what is a federal inspection, which is called HQS. So this is a housing quality standard inspection. And so, you know, those inspectors will make sure that all of the apartments are up to code. And if they're not, the subsidy is frozen. So there is a financial interest in making sure that the apartments are not only renovated, but also maintained long term. So, so something like if the inspector goes in and notices that the burners on the stove are no longer working, that would be an automatic fail. The management company would have 30 days in order to cure. And if they didn't, then the subsidy would be frozen. So there are inspections regularly. Also, PAC residents can call 311 and get an HPD inspection. That's something that is not afforded to public housing residents, but PAC residents can. So yes, the long answer to your short question is yes.
Okay, so it seems that there was a report that in years past, there weren't enough inspectors. So, you know, according to the entire portfolio, you have to do an annual inspection, but somehow some properties didn't get an annual inspection. So, you know, it was proposed to get more inspectors. I know that in even previous meetings at NYCHA properties, people have advised that when like for example, right now in this cold season, a lot of people would complain about not getting heat. But when there's no nighttime inspectors, so by the time they come in the day, maybe they're at 50 degrees again, or it's a 50-degree day, but they're not necessarily there's not like this inspector squad that would go on the coldest day of the season to check, at 10 p.m. at night whether or not they're getting the proper heat, right? So, is there any evidence of that? Because what we've been hearing is residents call and say, "Hey, I'm not getting heat," and then by the time, then an inspector comes, it might no longer be a problem, but then they had to suffer the cold nights, not being able to sleep and having to deal with the drama of that. So, what's your take on nighttime inspectors, and are you keeping up with annual inspections?
Yeah, so two different things, right? So the inspectors come, they do an annual inspection, and it's basically they just walk around the apartment with a clipboard and they look around what works and what doesn't work, right? In terms of heat, though, that is done by our heating team, which is 24 hours, 7 days a week. And an inspector wouldn't be sent into that apartment. A heating plant technician would be sent into the apartment. They do, so they are required to take temperatures in 3 different rooms. So they go into the kitchen, they go into usually one of the bedrooms, and they may go into a common space. They have to take readings, take pictures of them, and send them in. Now, depending on on a night like this, it's really, it's really cold and the demand is very high. They will prioritize developments where we have like a development-wide outage or a building outage and then we'll get to the individual apartments. But so, I'm not saying that, you're not going to hear from folks who said, like, I called it in or I put it in on the app and nobody came to my apartment. That does happen. Is it possible for it not to? But we do, Nikolai and I, especially during the winter, we deal with literally, a lot, a lot of heating complaints. And I do see individual apartments, getting dealt with regularly. I also do. So NYCHA got in big trouble for inspections years ago. In fact, we stopped doing inspections altogether. And this found us in violation of both federal and local law. As a result, we had to enter into an agreement with HUD, and so there is a monitor now that makes sure that we're doing these inspections. And ultimately, I actually think that was a really good arrangement because it makes sure that we're doing what we're supposed to.
Do you know the number? How many people do you have on staff for the heating squad people?
So our heating team altogether is over 850 staff. That doesn't mean they're all on at the same time, but they is 850 staff throughout the city, and they are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And as far as the heating staff is concerned, are they dedicated to particular developments, or is it like a central office, and you just get sent to whomever needs it, the help?
Yeah, so we have borough roving teams. So when you call, you are calling into Long Island City, and they dispatch, so Bronx team. So we have like a Northwest Bronx team, we have a South Bronx team, we have a Rockaway team, we have different teams in different areas.
Okay. Thank you. I know if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to raise your hand. But I think this is good that we're having this conversation because we are also going to be talking about our budget priorities. And when it comes to the budget priorities, NYCHA tends to be on the budget regularly, at least as long as I've been in the community board. It's been about 4 years or so, but and NYCHA's on it, and also HPD tends to be on the budget. So some of these questions is good that you're addressing these questions, and you mentioned that the way we can help is to make sure that our officials know about the help that's needed. So getting this information helps us to be informed so that we can, put some of these items on the list of priorities, which include like having inspectors for heat or maybe helping with upgrades, especially now we have these local laws that focus on green energy, and maybe NYCHA obviously has to make those changes. So we want to put those on there. If there are residents who need lead cleaned out of their apartments, we would want that. So it's always good to hear from you directly because we don't want to just make things up. So it just so happens that we actually are going to focus on the budget today. Like we'll start today. It won't be the end, but at least we can have something to work with. So thank you for sharing the information. And if there's anyone else on the call who has a question, please feel free to raise your hand. And if you're not able to raise your hand, you can just ask the question before we move forward with our budget priorities. Going once, going twice. And so if there are no further questions, we would like to thank both Brian and Nikolai for sharing their information with us. We're going to hold it to you that you'll be visiting us again. If we
If you invite, I can't guarantee it's the two of us, but somebody will come, definitely.
No, for sure.
So
we always
Yep.
like to invite people from the community or people who have something to say that information that can be shared with the community. So thank you once again. And you're free to stay on the call. You don't have to, but you're free to stay on if you want to hear what the budget priorities are. But if not, thank you again. And after this meeting is over, of course, this recording will be saved and we'll look forward to the slide deck so that we can add that to the minutes with the video and what have you. So thank you again. We
Yes,
appreciate
thank you
your
guys for
time.
coming.
we
You
appreciate
both,
it,
very
and we appreciate the
informative.
opportunity. And the budget presentation does sound interesting, but I also need to eat dinner.
Likewise.
Understood.
Thank you.
Understood. Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
Have a good night,
Have a
you
great night.
guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So the next item obviously is the budget. I guess I can actually, I'm going to ask if my screen could be shared and then I'll just look at, I know it's in the email, so give me a second okay, thank you, Artie. So I'm just going to pull up the budget. If you don't have it, that's fine. Just give me a second. Budget. Okay. And 1 second, share. So you can all see my screen that says Bronx. It has like a nice little picture with the pond. Okay. So this will just be a start. So basically we're focusing on the preliminary budget for the fiscal year 2027, 2028. Sometimes the numbers, is it 2027, really 2028, 2029? Anyway, we're going to start this conversation about our budget. And I'm just going to scroll through because this is the Bronx, but it has all of the different agencies. So I know when it comes to housing, it's page 138. So I'm just going to scroll through. If anyone wants this budget, the community board has it, but I just want us to focus on our housing. So let me just do this really quickly, just so we can see. So the number on the far left is the priority, followed by the tracking code, and then project information, the agency response. So let me once again scroll down to 138. I hope no one's eyes are crossing. But so here is one of our budget priorities. It is to renovate or upgrade public housing developments. And we just had two guest speakers from NYCHA. Just so happens that this is one of our priorities is the NYCHA infrastructure upgrades, funding for facade work and roof repair for NYCHA at Marble Hill houses. And the agency response is that it supports it but cannot accommodate. It says that NYCHA has several active projects at Marble Hill. I actually did go to that capital tracker to see. So I'm not sure why they can't accommodate it, but sometimes what we do is we still ask that they accommodate, some of these activities. And I did go to the tracker and it shows, I mean, I'm not like an expert at what's going on, but I did go and said project progress, delivery type design, bid, build, and then it said planning 100%, plan start date was 2020, 60% design, procurement says 0%, construction 0%. So I'm not yet sure what that means, but
I
it
can
is
tell
one of
you
our,
what that means.
thank you.
Yes. So what this means is that they are doing a design build, right? That means that they hired someone to design and build out what it looks like it's a community center for Marble Hill.
Okay,
Right now, they finished planning it, but they're not finished designing it. That means, so at some point, this community, right now, it looks like the priority is this building, this community center for Marble Hill. And that seems to be the reason why they're saying no to the facade work that would get rid of the scaffolding around Marble Hill projects. So it looks like the procurement goal is right, 2026. And then it looks like construction is not going to be done till 2027,
right.
according to that budget, which means that they are essentially putting on hold any more support for Marble Hills until this community center for Marble Hill gets built and turned over. So they're saying no more money for Marble Hill because they're already supporting the construction of a community center. So I don't know the history behind this community center project, but right now they're in the end stages of designing, and then construction will kick, or pre-construction, which is procurement. Procurement just means buying the stuff.
Okay,
So
okay, good.
they're not finished designing, they're halfway through designing, but they're supposed to be done designing by the end of the year.
Right.
And then next year, they're going to kick off starting to buy whatever, perhaps HVAC equipment for this community center or like long lead items for this community center. And then they'll kick off construction in 2027. And could you scroll down real quick just to see the dates? Scroll down.
Actually, when
So
on
planned
my
end date is 2029.
okay, I just wanted to make sure you're looking at this that
Those
I
dates. Yeah, I'm looking at the dates of
at the
this
tracker.
project.
I mean,
Yeah,
can you see the
community
tracker?
center upgrade. So that's it. So they're saying
Oh,
that
okay.
they are no longer going to give Marble Hills any more money because they're investing in this community
Right. Okay.
center upgrade. And it's $4.5 million right there, estimated
Yeah.
budget. They're
And it's
already giving them $4.5 million to do it. They're in the middle of designing it. So Marble Hills is not going to get any money. And I mean, I guess that's a question where it's just like, are they saying then that Marble Hill is not going to get any money until after this is done, March 2029? Because then at that point, then we should prioritize other projects because they feel that they've like they're already supporting Marble Hill houses in a significant way.
and I guess we can contact the agency to see what's actually going on. I mean, I know we have this 100% of the planning was done, as you mentioned, 68% of the design is taking place. And these are the projected dates. I'm wondering, do they actually like have pictures or portfolio or something that they regularly show? Or who do they have to show? Do they show the community board? Do they go directly to the NYCHA reps that we just had online? Like, how do we know what is going on?
I mean, I think it's worth finding out, right, from Marble Hill Houses residents. Hey, like you guys asked for a community center. Right now, you're prioritized for this community center upgrade,
Mm-hmm.
which means that everything else is really like taking a back seat, right?
Right.
So, you know, do they want the facade work prioritized or this community center prioritized, right? And then is there an opportunity to pause this so the facade work could get done, right? Like that's all we have. Otherwise, right now at CBA, what this sounds like to me is that we need to prioritize other properties because they feel like they filled the bucket enough for Marble Hill houses because they're funding this project.
I'm actually good. Thank you. Is there anyone on this call who has any input on this before we move forward? Because as Jessica mentioned, when it comes to our budget, is generally like the monies for housing will go towards NYCHA, like Marble Hill, or maybe like HPD. Um, so yeah, we'll see.
I
Artie's
agree.
muted. Go ahead, Artie, or
Oh,
Oh, we can always ask Tony Edwards, who's the president of Marble Hill Tenant Association, on his input and see what he says as well. I did invite him to attend this meeting, but we can always send him an email and see what he says as well.
Thank you.
yeah, if Tony says, I think we should let him know, hey, Tony, you're getting this community center upgrade. It's in the design phase. That means that anything else that Marble Hill might need is gonna go in the back burner to get this community center. Is this community center upgrade more important or less important? That's, like I don't know the impact. I don't know how they kind of calculate the impact, right? Is the community center, they're okay with having the scaffolding forever because they're going to have a community center at some point, and that's a little bit more important. Um, I don't know. He'd know the impact, right? And could comment on that. And sorry, Brittany, you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say I think I agree with you. I think it's important to get the information from him first before we make a decision. Obviously, I think certain things might be more important than the next, but maybe for them, that is extremely important for them for whatever reasons, for the youth or for whatever they're choosing to do with this community center. So I think it's great to get all the information before we know exactly what we'll be supporting in the budget, um, and what would actually help assist.
And of course, in that email, we could let him or whoever else know that I think the deadline, I know there was some delay, but if I remember it correctly, the deadline is late April, early May, or um, so we don't want people to like delay in getting that information to us because at the end of the day, we do want to still put some of these priorities on the list. And if no one responds, then we're just going to have to go along with what we have. Um, this is why we do ask that, the community, provide some input so that we're not just making these decisions based on what we think is most important when they might feel like something's more important. But I'm going to try to, I know I have a couple of tabs, so I'm going to try to go to the oh, that was um, there are so many tabs here. Can you see everything? Okay, because I'm going to try to go back to the budget. And the next item on the agenda or the budget is additional building inspectors. I I don't see a lot of housing priorities here because some have been accommodated. For example, with respect to the Department of Buildings and additional inspectors, including expanding training programs, it says the agency does support It supports it and it can accommodate. It supports it and it can accommodate. And the explanation is the City of Yes and ADU, which is the those dwelling units. What is it? Somebody help me with the A.
ADU.
No, but help me with the A. I know
The what?
it's ADU, like the A stands for.
Oh, I think it's auxiliary dwelling unit. I don't know.
We'll just say
Like
ADU for now.
accessible. I'll Google it for
I'm
you.
like, thank you.
Accessory.
Thank you.
Accessory dwelling
Dwelling.
unit.
I know the dwelling unit part. I'm like, what is the A again?
Accessory dwelling unit.
So the City of Yes and ADU require the department to train and hire new inspectors to enforce and conduct plan the exam review. So that was also on our budget.
I do want to acknowledge Julie's mic doesn't work, but she said that the city can support
One and
other
one.
projects. They
Right.
can get more money for other projects. You can have more than one project funded. So, perhaps we can follow up with regards to them not prioritizing it. We can ask, hey, like you've done it before, you've supported multiple projects at a single housing like housing property, like what's the deal here, right? Like, and then perhaps we can get feedback on what are other public housing projects getting, right? Because if they're saying, hey, we're capping 5 mil for every property, right? Or is it a per capita, right? Like I don't know how they decide when a certain NYCHA property receives a ceiling or is at their funding ceiling, and how long does that look like? Because if that's their excuse right now, it seems like they're going to continue saying that
Right.
until the community center is built and done.
Right.
And then, and then they can cash into a new opportunity. But that's a long time, right? We're in
Right.
2026. So they're saying that they are not gonna give Marble Hills another dime until 2029. And that's not fair because if design like if it's a $4.5 million project, like they haven't spent any money really if they're still in design.
Right.
So like why couldn't they support another project while this is still in design? Tell me we're in construction and tell me that we're spending $4.5 million, but they're not spending a single dime. They're still on design. Maybe, maybe at best 10%, but they're not spending more than 10% of this $4.5 million like allocation. So it'd be interested to see like what does that even mean if they're not in construction yet?
Right.
I don't think that's fair.
I agree.
And of course, no one wants to assume, but after our discussion tonight with hearing that there's a backlog. I mean, I know in general budgets, like money is allocated to particular projects, but if it's something where they're like, oh, well, it turns out that we needed to use this for something else, then we would want to know that as well. Like, but I can't answer that question, but these with us not having information, it leads us to speculate or just try to figure out what's going on.
Right. So I mean, Artie's on the line to support us, right? And I just want to follow up, Artie, if you can let us know what NYCHA or how we can find out what NYCHA's manpower is, right? And then, how we can understand what Community Board 8 is getting out of that. Because even on the inspectors, just the heating inspectors, right? Because I remember that being a big deal last
Right.
time we met
That's
at a
HPD.
NYCHA property.
Yeah, that was HPD.
So, right. So there's 850 heating people. How many people are in the Bronx? Just making sure that there is a fair distribution of support in the Bronx and in Community Board 8, across other districts. I think that's important to know.
So also additionally, Julie did ask, and I was thinking the same thing. Even though we know that they're funding that Marble Hill Community Center, how do we know that they won't have funding for other items? Unless I somehow missed it.
No, that's right. That's the conversation where it's like yes, you allocated $4.5 million towards a community center and Marble Hill projects. You are still in design. That could go into a vote and never happen, right? That means no real money is really being spent right now because you're not in construction. Once you're in construction, absolutely. You're paying for permits, you're paying for labor, you're paying, for construction in place every single day. But when you're designing, like it's just a bunch of architects playing with paper and color palettes. Like there's not a lot of money per se being spent this year to then say that, hey, you're not going to get any money until 2029 because we've already allocated money. What is the annual allocation towards Marble Hills? And because it's just like this facade work, like they're gonna have scaffolding for the forever. Might as well just make it a fixed structure if you're not gonna get the scaffolding out because you're not gonna fund more than one project. So it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but we don't know though if they're just going to stick to that funding and not fund other projects.
We don't know, which is asking the question is the most important thing, so we don't speculate. Correct.
Yeah.
And I know, Artie, you mentioned HPD. I know we talked about inspectors. With respect to these inspectors, it's not just for Marble Hill or for Independence. This is also for like any building. This is more of a question. Aside from like co-ops and condos, are those inspectors for any building when it comes to heating?
Yeah, it should be rental apartments.
Okay.
Brian did explain how it worked for NYCHA. But yeah.
Okay. So we do have what is this?
And then usually like Julie can, I mean, she can't chime in, but usually we keep items on the requests until they're, like fully funded or until they're funded. So
Right.
for the Marble Hill Community Center, we can still keep that on. It does us no harm if we keep it on and then add other items as well.
Right.
Just so they know that we're, still advocating for that community center.
Of course. And I
Because the moment we remove it, then who says that, if we remove it from our list, they can just pull it as well. Who knows? That way they see that we're advocating for it.
exactly. I mean, I think it's been on since before I joined, so I do leave it there. Luckily, they do support it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, they do support it. They just said they couldn't
Mhm.
accommodate. But we could still keep pushing for that.
For
And there's
sure.
Department of Housing, as I mentioned, that's agency supports and can accommodate the inspectors. Maybe we can just get numbers like how many inspectors do they have and all of that, so we can check in on that. I'm just going. I don't, like I mentioned, there weren't a lot of budget priorities around housing per se. I think there maybe were four, so I'll just skip down now to 143, which is right here. Wait, is 143 on mine? It's where is it? Department of Housing Preservation and Development. And this has to do with providing, expanding, and enhancing programs for housing inspections to correct code violations. So agency supports and can accommodate. So we should keep that on. It's a priority for the administration and for HPD. And we will continue to work with key stakeholders to ensure poor housing conditions in New York City are properly enforced. Or, well, not that the poor housing conditions are enforced, but that the inspection and upkeep of those conditions are enforced. So that can remain on there. But we'll continue to have discussions, and if people want to add items from the developments that we're not aware of, if they want to bring that to our next meeting, that's all well and good. And let's see. I think those were the main, I think that was pretty much it, because the rest of the budget priorities were for like the other agencies. So of course we can advocate for them, but this is a housing committee, so that's who we're focusing on. So any input or any questions about our budget? Okay, going once and going twice. Okay, I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second so that I can see the agenda and things. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is our chair's report. And actually, I do sort of have a report, but it's sort of business as well. But anyway, something that came to my attention that I thought would be maybe nice to focus on in the near future. And I saw this in one of these news. I was reading like one of the newspapers. I don't know if it was a Riverdale Press or what have you, but I came across these two young men. They're from Fordham University. Well, it said they were 19. I don't know if they're still 19, but apparently they started a not-for-profit, I guess, called Leading Civic Resets. And it's as you can possibly see, their mission is to advocate for zoning reform and affordable housing solutions in New York City through student-led initiatives and community outreach. And the reason why they started this organization is because as college students, they found that it was hard for them to find affordable housing in the city. And so at 19, they founded this organization. And so I just became curious. Like, I mean, I just learned about them like maybe a week or so ago. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Perhaps maybe in the near future, they could be guest speaker. But I just thought, hey, at least you have people like young people who are also thinking about affordability because they are the next people who will be that next generation. They will be the ones inheriting this this land, this housing. And if they can't afford the housing, where are they going to go? So it's Fareed Sofiev and Angela Massa. And I thought maybe, it would be nice to learn a little bit more about what they have going. And that's pretty much my report for now. Like I said, I just learned about them, but it was nice to see that there are some young people who are, pushing, according to what they say, they're pushing for affordable housing. And I'm assuming that's what their focus is in school. So that's that. Any questions? Okay, so our next item on the agenda is old business. And of course, old business, I know this came up a couple of times. So old business is, of course, revisiting TOPA. I know we talked about putting it on hold because we were getting a new mayor and we now have a new mayor. And so we do want to sort of move forward with bringing the TOPA resolution to the floor. But it would be important for us, all of us on this committee, to also be familiar with some of the I know we know the pros, but to be familiar with some of the cons so that if questions arise, we can, know how to address those issues. But we still do want to move forward with bringing it to the floor at some point in the near future, knowing that COPA has received some support, which is the community-based, the community version of TOPA, the full community, version versus tenant. Yeah, that's that. Is that Artie?
Yeah, so I think we held off on the TOPA because we were waiting for a new legislative session to
Right.
occur in the state assembly and the state senate, and so they can be reintroduced. I'm just looking online right now. I don't
Sorry.
think they've been reintroduced in the assembly and senate just yet, so I'll keep everyone posted once they are reintroduced in the houses. But right now, I believe, yeah, right now it looks like Mamdani is still listed as a co-sponsor, so it's definitely still from last year. So it
Yeah.
looks like the bill has not been reintroduced for this session.
But we definitely want to keep it at the forefront of our minds because we
Yes.
That's the old business part, because I know sometimes people can get frustrated when we have something, when we propose something, or bring something, have something, like introduce something at a meeting, and then it feels like nothing is happening. But it's not so much that we're not doing anything, it's just that you know there are a lot of movement parts, and so we just wanted to make sure that we keep it fresh on people's minds so that it doesn't go down the memory hole. And then like 10 years later, we're like, oh yeah, remember TOPA? But we just wanted to make sure that we are aware that it is still at the forefront of people's minds. And with that said, any new business?
I guess still on old business. I don't know if I ever received like the testimonies from the organization that we invited, right? Like, I'd like to be a advocate for people who they can help. So
That's
is
right.
there what's the update on that?
What is it? CNYCN. That's what it's Center for New York City Neighborhoods. Yes, because we did reach out. So I'll reach out. CNYCN. I can reach out because I know I have the email address, and we were told we were going to get testimonies, but unless it's in spam, and I don't have spam in that. I have zero spam, 0%. So I can reach out to our guest speaker. I think he came in October or something like that. So between then and now, maybe there are some testimonies. So thank you for that reminder. And thank you. I just put it on in the minutes. Any new business?
I know, I mean, it wasn't this year, but in previous years, just speaking on, like, I remember feeling super emotional about not being in the housing committee on my community board, but not really understanding the steps of how how our New York City works when it's like, you're unhoused and you're looking for housing. What is the process, right? And understanding that you can't just walk to any shelter. You have to go to an intake facility, and then that intake facility has to kick off an application and all that. I remember being really interested in wanting to create kind of like a shortcut something where it's like, are you unhoused? It's just like, this is the CB8 process, because I don't know if we have an intake facility in CBA. So we'd have to direct them to intake facilities outside of the community, and then they'd have to kick off an application for services that way. Like, I'd be interested in bringing that back to the front, and like, just so we understand, it's just like, if you find someone who's unhoused, who is looking to be housed or is looking for services, what is the first step they have to do? Who do they have to contact? Where do they go? Because right now, like, at least for me, I learned through being a part of this community board that,
Right.
hey, you have to go to an intake center, but I'm not necessarily too familiar with who those people are. Maybe inviting them to our next session to talk about what the intake process looks like, what kind of documentation will somebody need? Do they help people get documentation if they need it? Like, how does that all work?
No, thank you. When that I remember that meeting, and I think we had even discussed having like as you mentioned, like a shortcut, but one of those those sort of cards, like if you're unhoused, you go here, because we didn't have, I think you have to send someone to like the South Bronx or something like that. If it's like there were specific steps. And we did say that we wanted to at least have like like
Like an
maybe some
information
cards.
card or something?
Yeah, just
Exactly.
something quick, because we
Or
do have like
scan
the
QR.
housing resource guide, but that's like a whole booklet. Like it's just
Right. I was
something.
thinking of
Yeah.
that, like, but that would be too much because they would need the whole entire booklet versus having a card or something smaller. It's a little bit more attainable. And it
Right.
would probably be easier for us to spread it out within the community, leave them at schools, churches, community boards, something that's a little bit more easy access to. That might be something really good. Because a lot of people don't know the process unless you're in the shelter business or if you know someone or you're in the community board. So I think that's actually a really good idea. I didn't think of that at all.
With QR codes. And I think we talked about even because the community board is kind of far for people, that maybe even placing them in the train stations. I remember that conversation and it did come up. So we can, I know Artie's on the line, but we can bring it up to Farah in terms of making little like cards
And
with like the QR codes and things like
Yeah, they
that.
call them palm cards. They're
Thank you.
supposed to be, yeah.
And that could be achievable like within the next 2 meetings. I feel like if we all have like a drawn out plan and we kind of choose what will be best fitting, I guess send it to Farah, and if Farah approves it, then we could just get them printed.
I agree. We can
That would be
start
great.
with,
And it's
a few
educational.
hundred
So
of them and then, take it from there.
There you go. So that would be our project. And since we're on the topic of housing, you brought up the housing guide. Maybe we can see, if we need to update it with any other information. So we can think about updating, not necessarily within the next 2 meetings, but just think about updating the housing guide.
Before the end of the year, yeah.
There you go. Well, that's June, right?
That's
Um,
fine, before June.
okay. So yeah, we have our work cut out for us, but this is what we're here for. Um, so that was new business, new mixed with old. Otherwise, I'm speaking slowly just in case anyone has anything to add. Going once, going twice. Well, if no one has anything else to add, then I make a move to adjourn the meeting at 8:11.
Second.
Thank you. Then the meeting is adjourned at 8:11 p.m.